Are there things about your home that you would like to change, but you're not in a position to renovate? Maybe you're a renter, or maybe an expensive home reno just isn't in the budget right now. Or perhaps the idea of tearing your house apart and upending your life just doesn't sound all that appealing. There is also the possibility that your home wouldn't actually benefit from a renovation. There are a lot of older houses out there that are, really cool or have the potential to be really cool and very quickly lose that potential and become very basic and cookie cutter thanks to a home reno gone wrong. Take, for example, the overhaul of my childhood home, which I covered in a previous video. They completely robbed that house of all its charm and character. So in this video, we are going to look at some common, let's call them design challenges that people often face in their homes and find some ways to work with these elements that aren't going to require a sledgehammer. Even if you are completely convinced that these things are just dated and bad and cannot be salvaged, you might be surprised at how you can actually make them tolerable, maybe even better than tolerable. So let's get right into it. Okay, let's talk about brick. So when it comes to interior brick, this could be brick walls, this could be brick fireplaces, which, there was an era when these were really popular. And it seems in recent years there has been a trend towards either painting brick or covering it up completely. This is such a great fireplace. Covering this brick just, this pains me. So I'm going to recommend that you leave your brick alone. Just let it be, embrace it. It's part of your home's history. I mean, there might be, in some cases, a really hideous brick where painting it might still be a reasonable option. But most of the time, I think you should just let your brick live. Pair it with some crisp white walls, just really let it shine. Brick is great. So this sort of reddish wood, this sort of cherry look, is not really a cabinet color that has been very popular in recent years. So if your cabinets look like this, you might be kind of struggling as to how to work with them. So I once heard this tip, and I cannot remember where I heard it, so I cannot credit this person, but their suggestion was that you think of the woods in your home as colors rather than thinking of them as wood tones. So if you've got this sort of, cherry colored cabinet, think of them as being like a burgundy hue or a maroon or whatever most closely resembles the cabinet color. And then you can start thinking about how you would want to utilize that color in the space. In this kitchen, they have just fully embraced it. They have color drenched the walls in this hue that's very similar to the cabinet color, and they've provided some contrast as well with the cobalt blue on the island and the stools. And blue is another great color to pair with red cabinets like this, and a smoky blue like this is especially lovely if you're looking for maybe a slightly more traditional look. Now, what do you do if your hardwood is really red? Because if you've got hardwood running throughout your house, there's probably a good chance that you're not going to want to paint all of your walls burgundy or blue. So in this situation, I would recommend going with white walls. It's just going to help to sort of neutralize the floor. And then look for ways that you can incorporate those red hues into your decor, like a great vintage rug, for example. Okay, so still on the topic of wood tones, what do you do with cabinets that have more of a yellow or a gold undertone to them? So something like a honey oak or a blonde wood like a maple or a pine. Again, this is a situation where I tend to lean towards white. Other light, warm neutrals can still look a bit dated when paired with these kinds of woods. So by going with white, it's just going to feel brighter and fresher. If you want to bring in some darker shades, a charcoal gray or a soft black can also work really nicely with these wood tones. If your cabinets happen to be a slab door style, especially in something like a maple, I think these lend themselves really well towards a sleek Scandinavian inspired look. if your cabinet doors have more of a profile to them, oftentimes you're going to want to look more to a traditional or a transitional look for your kitchen. Now, when it comes to hardwood floors with a yellow undertone, same sort of logic applies. You want to avoid light, warm neutrals like beige or cream that can really just accentuate the yellowness of your floor. Stick to like a crisp white or even a soft gray. My old condo, the hardwood in there was quite golden, and I painted the walls in a light gray to sort of counteract that. And yes, of course, this was at a time when gray walls were much more popular than they are right now, but it really did work. And another thing you might want to consider is painting your trim. Now, not if you have really nice woodwork, but if your trim is like the really thin, cheap stuff, you might want to consider painting it white or painting it out in your wall color to really help make your home feel more current. Okay. Yes, we are still talking about wood, but we're moving on to wood paneling. Now, wood paneling that looks like this, I am very tired of, but classic wood paneling like this, I still think is pretty fantastic. So if you have anything like this in your house, please try to find a way to hold on to it. Change the stain color if you have to, but please don't paint over it. Please don't take it down. If it's not really your style, hang some cool artwork on it, bring in some really great furniture, but try to find a way to embrace it. And that also goes for any paneling that looks like this. Okay, this next one might be a little controversial. We're going to talk about faux wood paneling, which is probably one of the most hated of all wall finishes. And yes, you can paint it, but I often don't really like how this looks. You can see all the grooves in the panels, you can see all the seams in between panels. So if you can find a way to work with it, I do think that it is something worth considering. So here where I live, there is a design firm that does a lot of bars and restaurants and breweries, and they do an incredible job of bringing this sense of nostalgia into their designs. Like this restaurant, I have eaten here, and it is so fun. It just takes me right back to my childhood and hanging out in friends' basements. I'm sure a lot of you know what I'm talking about. So if you are stuck with some paneling like this, especially if it's in your basement, do a little digging, try some thrifting, see what kind of cool vintage finds you can come up with, and maybe create a little nostalgia of your very own. All right, let's move on to bathrooms now. Let's talk about what to do if you find yourself dealing with a bit of a retro bathroom situation. I think this is another great opportunity to really challenge yourself to embrace what you're working with and have a little fun with it. A quick Pinterest search of retro bathrooms brought up some really inspiring images. So if your bathroom is functional and in good condition, maybe gutting it isn't actually necessary after all. Maybe a fresh coat of paint, some colorful artwork, and great accessories is all you really need. Okay, here's another tricky one. Sheet vinyl flooring. You know the stuff. You often probably hear it referred to as lino, but this is actually lino, and this is far less offensive than sheet vinyl. When I moved in with Adrian, our front hall, our kitchen, and our nook were all of vinyl that looked a lot like this one, and I hated it. Sometimes there are some vinyl colors and patterns that are slightly less offensive than this, but they're all pretty bad. And this is not a material or a look that I see making any sort of comeback, well, ever. So I think it's a pretty safe option just to go ahead and cover it up. Now, how you go about this can really vary depending on your situation and your floor. I have heard of people painting their vinyl flooring. I've never attempted this, so I cannot comment on how well this works or how well this holds up. You can try a peel and stick tile. In a small space, I've seen where people will use these vinyl floor mats, or you could install a vinyl plank floor that floats and can be placed directly on top of your existing flooring. So what I ended up doing was installing vinyl plank flooring over top of the existing sheet vinyl. And I know LVP flooring gets a lot of hate. And was it ideal? No, but it's what made sense for me at the time. I was on a bit of a time constraint. I was on a tight budget. This was very affordable. I could install it myself, which of course was a huge cost savings, but also meant that I could install it on my own timeline. And yeah, of course, I would much rather have real hardwood, but it wasn't an option at the time. And this is still a big improvement over what I was working with before. So sometimes we make compromises, my friends. Laminate countertops. Now, not all laminate countertops are created equal. You have the old retro ones that had like the metal edging on the front, which could be quite fun, but they're becoming more and more rare. The newer versions, some of these aren't terrible. You know, if the color and the pattern are pretty subtle, they can be okay. Other times, they're not so great, and those are the times that maybe you want to consider covering them up. Now, there are a couple of different ways you can go about this. One way is to paint your laminate countertops, and I have done this. I've done this a couple of times. The first time was in my old condo, and I actually found that it worked quite well. I had painted laminate countertops the entire time that I lived there, which was like 7 years, and I did get the occasional little chip or scratch, and I would just touch it up with, you know, some leftover paint and like a little artist paintbrush, and it wasn't too bad. And I was also really careful to always use my wood cutting board that I kept out on my kitchen counter at all times. The second time that I painted a laminate countertop was here in our little half bath upstairs, and I have to be honest, it didn't work as well this time. And I don't know if I messed up the application or if it was the products I was using, but I'm getting way more chips and scratches than the first time I did this. So it's just something to be aware of. If you're going to paint your countertops, really do your research, make sure you're going about it properly. And also just keep in mind that this is not really intended to be a permanent solution. It's more of a temporary fix. Now, the other option, which is also a temporary fix, is to cover your countertops in peel and stick vinyl, or what we often hear referred to as contact paper. And, you know, this is quick, it's easy, affordable, great for renters. I'm sure we are all very familiar with the many examples out there of people covering their countertops with faux marble contact paper. And I'm not opposed to this method. I just think you should avoid the faux marble look. I actually think you should avoid any faux looks at all with this. I mean, you're not fooling anyone. No one's actually going to believe that your countertops are stone. So I think if you're going to go this route, just stick with a solid color. Okay, ugly tile. Now, if you have some tile that you dislike, I do think your first consideration should be if there is any way you can make it work for you. So, you know, try to find some inspiration images online of cool spaces that might have tile that's similar to what you have. See if you can come up with any ideas that way. But if you're really feeling uninspired and it's a tile that you really strongly dislike, there are some ways you can cover it up. Tile can be painted, wall tile and floor tile, and much like painting a laminate countertop, you really want to make sure that you're doing your research, that you're prepping properly, you're using the right products, and again, consider this a temporary solution. Painting your tile is probably not going to hold up long term. Now, I have heard of people painting the wall tile in their tubs and showers. I am not convinced that this is a good idea. I'm pretty skeptical that when you have tile exposed to that much water, that a painted finish is going to hold up. So You can do this if you want to, but I would be cautious about trying this. And then of course there are the tile stickers. I'm sure many of you are familiar with these. They have them for walls, they have them for floors. I have used both. Now I have put tile stickers over the tile on my bathroom floors. I don't mind the look of it. It's not necessarily holding up all that well. I'm getting some peeling and curling along the edges, but I suspect that one of the reasons for this is that my tiles have a bit of a bevel on the edge. If you have a tile that's completely flat and smooth, these tile stickers are probably going to work much better for you. The tile stickers I've used on the wall tile are much thicker, and I found that those hold up much better. But in either case, you're going to want to keep in mind that these are meant to be a temporary fix. These are not a permanent solution. And again, remember, tile stickers are typically not designed for use on tubs or shower walls. All right, friends, that is everything I have for you today. Now, of course, there are lots of other ways that you could go about updating your home. You know, things like changing out light fixtures or swapping out hardware, but those are things we've already discussed in other videos. And my goal with this video was to try to tackle some of the bigger challenges where maybe the solutions are a little less obvious. So I hope I've given you some new ideas to consider. As always, I thank you so much for being here. I hope we see you at the next one, and bye for now.